Hey everybody, welcome back. I actually have something interesting I wanted to talk about today, and I brought on my partner Felix to talk about this since we're both pretty into Zelda as a whole.
Yep.
Okay, I completely forgot to give him a little portrait. Oh well. Uh,
That's fine.
I'll probably like go into like Sonic Forces or something and then make something quick or something. I don't know, but so we were talking about. Well, I was talking on stream about like Zelda games, and I realized that I never actually had like an in-depth conversation about what I personally feel about the Zelda games. Like in depth. I've talked about like Sonic games, I've talked about Pokemon games, but I've never really done it with Zelda. I have like maybe one or two videos talking about like where I think Zelda's going, but never about like what I feel about Zelda as a whole. So we made a list about the different Zelda games that we've played, and oh my gosh, I accidentally minimized like literally everything on my screen at once. Okay, so we have this list, and I think we're gonna just start at the top. This is all the mainline games, categorized from my scores on the left and his scores on the right. And we might as well just start talking from the top. We both gave Zelda 1 a silver,
Yep.
and I personally feel like that it's a really good place to start when talking about Zelda as a whole with the original Zelda. Like what is your base opinion on like Zelda 1 as a whole?
Zelda 1, I want to say, kind of set the whole premise for the series. It was a new kind of game at the time. Um, and even though it was very, well, simplistic, I guess would be the right word, considering it was on the NES. Um, it kind of immersed you in a way that a lot of other games at the time didn't. It gave you a pretty clear, like, I want to say, view of like what the goal of the game was. Like, it wasn't. What's the best way to explain this?
The game is an adventure game like through and through, I would say. Is that
Yeah,
is they really drop you into it and then say the goal is to wander. Don't feel bad about getting lost, you know?
yeah. It encouraged like just going around looking for secrets, exploring the world, and for the time the world in Zelda 1 was actually rather big compared to a lot of other games.
Yeah, and the reason why I personally like I think I may have mentioned at some point when I was playing the game by myself last year, like because I had not actually like finished Zelda 1 and 2 until last year. And I think at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that my my biggest problem with Zelda 1 is it's in that era of Nintendo games where to get through the game you needed to buy a Nintendo Power magazine to figure out like all the like secrets to it. And those have always felt so weird to me when it comes to video games. And I know that like not a lot of
Yeah.
people agree with me on it, but if I feel like that if you have to look up a guide to finish the game, not like 100% it, because 100%ing it like will oftentimes take like more precise stuff. I feel like that if you are playing a game and to finish the game you need some sort of like help, with it. I feel like at that point the game is a little bit too obtuse, and I feel that's a problem that Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 run into. But the overall like gameplay of the first two Zelda games are really tight. I feel to move on to Zelda 2, you said that you've never played it. So, uh I
Yeah.
I feel like the dynamic between the two is not really it's not really about the fact that the game is now like a side scroller than top down. It's more that the ethos of how you actually engage enemies is different, and it's why I gave it a bronze. I feel like that it kind of fails at the execution stage, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I haven't played it myself, but I've seen it played on streams and in like Let's Plays plenty of times. And it really does give that feeling that it's a little bit you are a little bit more lost in the world. It's not as straightforward, and yeah, overall the execution I would agree could have been better.
Like I hmm, going back to Zelda 1 though, I think one of the important parts of Zelda 1 is that you can still like wander around and you can defeat like several of the dungeons. I just feel like that to get the spectacle of rock, you have to go through like all of these hoops to even figure out that it's there. And no one really likes the idea of just wandering until the story appears. Like, okay, I don't want to say nobody because there are some people, but there's a distinct feeling amongst people that I've seen that nowadays, at least, if a game does that, it's bad. So Zelda 1 and 2, I kind of are a little bit less charitable on like a modern context, but for the time they were it's like it's no wonder that like the series blew up into the way it was, you know? Cuz
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
fun experience.
I mean, for Zelda 1, I mean, we have to keep in mind that this was in 1986.
Yeah.
So the technology, of course, was pretty limited. Um, but I feel like considering the limitations of the hardware and like in like game design in general at the time, um, it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, the other thing I kind of wanted to point out about like the first two Zelda games is that I still maintain the idea that Zelda 1 and 2, this dynamic between pretty good and solid, but a little bit confusing, into kind of fumbles its approach, is the exact same feelings I then feel about Breath of the Wild into Tears of the Kingdom, which even though I do rate higher, because it is more a together game by like modern standards, like it's like at the end of the day,
Mm,
like it still has the same ethos, and I do wonder if there ever was confirmation that Tears of the Kingdom was directly inspired by how they went about Zelda 2, just like how Zelda 1 was the inspiration for Breath of the Wild, because it even has like similar story beats and everything, but we can get to that when we get to that. So, my stipulation was that if we're gonna give platinums, that one of them should be given to a 3D game and one should be given to a 2D game. And you gave Link to the Past platinum.
yes.
Uh,
Link to the Past is, in my opinion, like the quintessential Zelda game that you should start with if you've never played Zelda before. Like if you've never touched a Zelda game before, the first game you should play is Link to the Past because it does a very good job at introducing the story, like with its little intro sequence with Link's uncle and all of that. Like it gives you a clear goal. It like tells you, hey, this is happening. This is why you're here. Do your thing. You're the hero. Like it's just nice like that. Like it's exceptionally well executed. Considering its age, it also looks pretty great.
It it holds up a
Um,
lot, like when it comes to overall gameplay and graphics. Like
yeah.
it is, if I remember correctly, a game that is older than me.
Yeah, the original release for Link to the Past in Japan
1991,
was
yeah.
November of 1991,
Yeah.
and in North America it was April of 1992,
Yeah,
and
so this game is a full
here in
year
Europe
older
it
than
was
me.
September of 1992. So yeah, it's older than us.
Yeah,
But I mean, if you look at the graphics for Link to the Past, this could easily be a game that was like, I want to say like on the Game Boy Advanced. Like it doesn't look like an NES, like an SNES game. It could have easily been something that was like one generation later.
yeah, it's a very like graphically impressive game overall, and I think
Yeah.
like you will oftentimes see like there is this like era of SNES games that directly inspire like other games. Link to the Past is one of those like in the like the top 5 like greatest games of all time of like things that were inspired by it. Like I still see to this day games and developers that were inspired by A Link to the Past when it comes to its overall design. And it is just a solid game with a solid story. I gave it a
Yeah,
gold though.
absolutely.
And I think,
It also had a great soundtrack.
yeah,
Always want to put
it
that out there
it's
as well.
very staple. Um, to kind of jump because I feel like it's kind of important. You said that you gave Link Between Worlds, which is technically a sequel to it, a gold. Meanwhile, I gave it a platinum. And I feel like my reasoning for giving it a platinum is very personal bias because while it still has like all of the stuff that is in Link to the Past, it has this weird sort of, yes, we know that this is Link to the Past. We're going to change it up a little bit to where you realize, oh,
Yeah.
this is actually just a different game. It's not just a remake. And the thing that makes me really enjoy Link Between Worlds slightly more than A Link to the Past is in fact Ravio as a character. It feels like such a
Hmm.
simple thing, but the idea that there is a dark world version of Link instantly made me like instantly made me enjoy the setting of Link Between Worlds like a lot more. And it's just that one simple thing that puts it above it. And I don't really have a good explanation like other than that, you know?
No, I can see that. I feel like the changes they made from Link to the Past to Link Between Worlds. I mean, most of them I would say are positive. Um, I was not necessarily a fan of the whole like merging into the wall thing. But I mean, obviously that was that game's gimmick, so it was kind of an integral part of the overall like story. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just didn't quite get the same vibe from Link Between Worlds that I got from Link to the Past. I can't really place my finger on why that is. Um, yeah, it just doesn't like push the same buttons.
Um, yeah. I guess like since I'm still on the topic of like, like games that are thematic sequels to it, I think we might as well just actually just full on jump to my thoughts on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom because I feel like that at the end of the day, I don't hate these games. In fact, I gave both of them gold, and I feel like that it does sort of a disservice between the two of them to just list both of them as gold, but I can't give either of them platinum, and I don't feel like lowering either one of them to silver because I still feel like that
Yeah.
they are well put together games. Like it's not the fact that they are uh I feel like Breath of the Wild and both Tears of the Kingdom are well made, well put together games, but I feel like that there is problems with both of them that don't make them into even my top 5 favorite Zelda games of all time. Like, well, no, I know from just looking at my list that Tears of the Kingdom does not make it. Breath of the Wild I think is like in number 4. And I feel like at the end of the day that there is that most of your enjoyment of Breath of the Wild and both Tears of the Kingdom is the moments where you're just wandering around and you find something cool and then you go, "Oh, that's neat." It's not really too much of what the game does because the actual story of those games are light. Tears of the Kingdom has a lot more story, but it's a lot more spread out according to all of the other games.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, I think personally for me, Breath of the Wild, I mean, I bet a million people have said this before, was kind of a breath of fresh air. Ha ha ha. Because it completely mixed up the like Zelda formula. Um, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Breath of the Wild, but um, I don't like the idea of an open world, do what you want Zelda game as much as the classic, hey, here's your story, here's your dungeons, and it's kind of sort of linear for the most part because I feel like Nintendo shines more when they have like a clear path to follow. Whereas in a lot of places in Breath of the Wild, the game just felt empty. There was just not much to do. Now you were just wandering around the world. I mean, yeah, you can go around, spend hours on hours trying to find Koroks, but that stops being fun after the first like 20 or so out of like 800, 900.
Yeah, I'm currently at like the like 4/5 mark of all of them
Yeah.
in my recordings, but like I still need like a little bit more.
Yeah, and so that's like, yeah, you finish the game, you finish the story, like you beat Ganondorf, blah blah blah, and you want 100% it. Well, have fun running around finding all the Koroks without using a guide. Um,
Yeah,
to
I
me,
currently have
that just becomes tedious very quickly. I don't have the patience for that. And I mean that's kind of similar to how I felt with the Gold Skull Talus in Ocarina of Time. Um, but at least for the most part, those were in places that made sense. Whereas the Koroks, you just sometimes find like you're in the middle of nowhere. Oh, there's a rock. Oh, it has a Korok under it. Surprise.
uh I know technically most people that have played Link's Awakening played it after Ocarina of Time because they played the the Game Boy Color version of the game, but technically it's first, uh which is fair. But I do want to kind of stay on topic with Ocarina of Time. Uh we both gave Ocarina of Time gold, and I feel like
Yep.
as an overview of Ocarina of Time, it's pretty okay. I personally do not like the dungeons of Ocarina of Time. I feel like they're a little bit lacking, but when we're talking about Zelda overall, like I'm never gonna disparage Ocarina of Time for setting up the way that later dungeons go, especially when I think about like because we both listed Majora's Mask as lower, but I fundamentally like the dungeons of Majora's Mask more than Ocarina of Time. I like the bosses in Ocarina of Time more than the bosses in Majora's Mask, but I still feel like to like lump all three of them together. I feel like Twilight Princess takes both of those mindsets and smashes them together brilliantly, which is why
Yeah.
it's like one of my favorite Zelda games of all time at that point. Like I feel like Ocarina of Time's biggest point is that it successfully took Link to the Past and what it did and transferred it into the 3D.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I
Uh,
mean, there were good dungeons in Ocarina. There were bad dungeons in Ocarina. I mean, I know some people hate Forest Temple. I know other people hate Fire Temple. Um, Personally, I think my least favorite is probably Spirit. I want to say. Yeah, I think Spirit Temple is probably my least favorite. Um, but um, I feel like it set up the the 3D entrance of the series probably as well as it could have. Like I said, it took what made Link to the Past great and like transferred it to 3D. And I mean, it's largely considered one of the best like games of all time. Although I want to say it, uh, well, if you asked me this like 10, 15 years ago, I would have said it's probably my favorite game of all time. Um, but in hindsight, there are things about Ocarina that are, I mean, by modern standards, kind of a bummer. Um, but overall, I'd say the execution was about as good as it could have been at the time. Now moving on from Ocarina to the next game in the series, we're looking at Majora's Mask, probably the Zelda game with the shortest development time. For those of you who don't know, Majora's Mask, the second Zelda game on the N64, came out about a year and a half, roughly, after Ocarina of Time. Um, and it's noticeable. It's very noticeable. It reuses a lot of assets from Ocarina, but even then, it manages to kind of create a unique setting and tell a very, I almost want to say it tells a very non-Zelda like story, because in terms of like its overall storyline, Majora's Mask is kind of an outlier a little bit in that there's so many speculations about what the story of Majora's Mask is actually supposed to be. Most people agree that it's the stages of grief that Link is going through in Majora's Mask, and that um, at the beginning of the game, when you fall down the great tree trunk and you get turned into a Deku and all that, that's Link dying and like ending up in like purgatory, quote unquote. That was a very interesting story twist. Um, and although the game never really tells you that that's what's happening, from a psychological standpoint, it's kind of clear that that's kind of what they were going for. And so even though they reused a lot of assets from OOT and only had a year and a half to do it, they managed to pull together a game that I think for a lot of people is as memorable, if not even more memorable than Ocarina. even though some of its parts aren't quite as fleshed out. I think most people would probably agree that the dungeons in Majora, overall, I would want to say are more fun than the ones in Ocarina. But the bosses are kind of forgettable. Um, like even from just from memory, I can only recall the name of like two bosses in the game. Whereas for Ocarina, I can probably name you almost all of them. So while their dungeons were good, I felt the bosses could have used some more work.
Yeah, I feel like one of the biggest downsides of Majora's Mask is the fact is it has a bunch of reused assets, but it means that they are able to use like characters that you would not have expected in Ocarina of Time to come back that you now have a completely different perspective of. Like most people when they play through Ocarina of Time don't really think too much about the Skull Kids that are in the Lost Woods. But most people when they think about Skull Kids, they think of it with Majora's Mask on because that's the one that everyone remembers. Like so when you go back into Ocarina of Time and you see the Skull Kids without the mask, and they're just like, "Wait, what?" It's always really
Yeah,
funny.
true.
Like
Yeah, it's kind of become like synonymous. Like, oh, the Skull Kid has Majora's Mask, so if you see them in OOT without the mask, it's kind of huh? Wait,
like
they're supposed to look different.
more people think about the interaction with the old lady that you have to put the mask on to stay awake from Majora's Mask more than that old lady character that had like two lines in Ocarina of Time. Like it's actually
Yeah.
quite impressive how two games with the same assets utilize both of those assets differently. I love it. I love how they did that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, they managed to like give all the characters kind of a completely different perspective. Because suddenly they're in completely different circumstances. Like Anu, for example, who in Ocarina of Time just stands around Kakariko and doesn't really do anything other than like take care of the chickens, is suddenly involved in this like deeper like background storyline with Cafe and the whole like lover's mask or whatever it was called, which is like one of the most like prominent side quests um in that game because it's one of the longest because it spans across all 3 days. Which kind of brings us to the whole like time mechanic in Majora, which I felt was a great idea.
I I once again feel
Um,
like its execution was well done. I just don't like how short it makes the game feel. Because it feels like because the game is dense but short, you know? And so you think about the
True.
game in terms of 3 days instead of this whole adventure. And it's like, okay, well, now I have to do like this section of the game before the time runs out, and then reset, and then do this section of the game before the time runs out, and then reset. And it just doesn't
Yeah,
feel as
true.
good.
Yeah, I feel like it in a lot of people would say it kind of railroads you a little bit into like, oh, I got to do this quest now, but I can't do anything else because if I do this other thing, then I miss my timer for like doing this first quest. And so it kind of feels like you have to play the game in sections. I want to say where it's like, okay, I'm doing this side quest now and nothing else, and then I start a new run and I do this next quest. And then if you miss, like you accidentally miss your time for doing whatever event, then oh crap, now I got to start all over again. And you got to go back to the first day, and you lose all your money and your items and all that jazz. Like all your ammo is like zeroed and everything. And so I can see like after a few cycles how it can get kind of tedious, almost. But overall, I'd say it's pretty solid game, but not quite good enough for a gold.
Yeah. Um, it is kind of interesting how we've so far talked about like three games, and we haven't talked too in depth on Breath of the Wild technically, but it is really fascinating how first game in a duology, whatever it's called, where it's like the first game pretty good, the second one kind of fumbles, and we're gonna get to Link to the Past's fumble in a bit, but when we talk about Ocarina of Time into Majora's Mask, it really does it really does show that it's like the first game has a lot of is solid, the second one has neat ideas. And it's less solid because they're shoving ideas uh into what was there before. So, going back to Link's Awakening. Uh Link's Awakening is I'm gonna just say right now, one of the most forgettable 9 out of 10s I've ever played. It is an amazing game. I cannot remember the game except for like a hazy dream, and I kind of I understand how ironic that is to say, but it really does feel like that Link's Awakening is a bunch of independent things that all lead up into one giant thing. And it really I don't want to say that it is one of those wandering games as well, but it certainly does have a lot less memorable moments, but the game overall is very solid and memorable in and of itself. Like I still think that the most memorable thing about Link's Awakening is the ending of the game. I feel like that is the thing that I will remember most about the game is the actual like ending of it. But the actual things that led up to the ending, I do not remember as much. And I feel like that's kind of selling it short, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I see what you mean on that, and I'm kind of inclined to agree, 'cause I also gave it a gold. But you're right, it's a forgettable good game. Like I remember it being a great game, but I can't for the life of me remember like half of it, even though I know it was really good. It is worth saying that I played the DX version, so the color version on the Game Boy Color. Um,
And the
and
version that
then
I
of course
played was
later the
yeah.
Switch remake.
Yeah, that's the one that I played mostly.
Um,
But like I did
yeah,
play through
I
a
haven't actually played it that much on the Switch. I think I played through it once. But I originally played it on the Game Boy Color. So most of my experience from it was like the top-down kind of Game Boy experience, and less so the like 2.5D Switch version. So yeah, I remember it being a good game, but I can't for the life of me remember half the stuff that happened in it,
yeah,
which
it
is
is very ironic if you know that most of the game is
yeah,
supposed to be in this like hazy dreamscape. And if
yeah,
that is the takeaway from it, that it was a pleasant dream, but it is hazy, I feel like that they did their job in a way kind of.
yeah, probably.
Uh but thematically staying on to the Game Boy, the Oracle games, both Seasons and Ages. I do understand that there is a fundamental difference between Seasons and Ages, but you have to talk about one and then immediately talk about the other. You can't just talk about them separately like you can like it's like what's the differences between Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver? And then everyone just kind of sighs and it's like not really anything.
Yeah,
But you have to play Seasons or Ages and then immediately play the other one because it is important to
yeah,
actually understand both halves of this game. And
yeah. There's that. And I mean, there's also the factor that they kind of link together. Like to do certain things in one game, you have to have done certain things in the other game, and then like you get a code, and then you transfer that over, and then it like unlocks certain things. So they're kind of interwoven with each other a lot like that, and yet even though they're very similar, they're also very different. Because of course, in Ages, the gimmick is you're traveling back and forth in time, whereas in Seasons, you well, as the name suggests, change the seasons in the world, and it like opens different paths and all that stuff. If I had to give them ratings separately, I would rate Seasons higher than Ages.
I
Um,
am inclined to agree. I would probably put seasons a bit above ages.
yeah.
The the other one that I kind of want to talk about is that it is really fascinating how considering how the feeling of both of these games are, that much like the it's I don't want to say sister game because it's not really fully related, but it's that sort of Game Boy like lineage of Zelda games. I feel like that the biggest problem with them is that they don't have incredibly what is a really what is a better way to put it than just say that the games are kind of boring. I because I don't want to come off as saying that like the games are bad, but the biggest problem with the biggest problem with all three of the Game Boy games is that I never feel like I want to go back to them, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that.
Like, and a lot of people have a little bit better of a perspective on Link's Awakening since it got remade, and they're like, "Oh, the game's pretty good." And then they're like, "That was a good first playthrough." I was like, and then they'll never touch it again. It's as I said, it's a very uh Link's Awakening is a very memorable 9, and I feel like both of the Oracle games are less memorable 8s. And I feel like that puts them a lot lower for me, is that even if they're well made, they're less interesting.
I'm not even sure if I would give them an 8.
Probably a little bit
I
lower,
feel
maybe
like
a 7.
I f- yeah, I feel like for me they're almost like a 6.5. Aegis in particular, I for some reason I did not really like Aegis. It just didn't really vibe with me. That might have been because Aegis was very puzzle focused, whereas Seasons was more action focused. Um, but yeah, Seasons I remember a lot more fondly than Aegis. Probably because I played these when I was like, I don't know, 8. So like I probably got stuck on puzzles a million times in Aegis. Whereas Seasons was like, oh, I see enemy, I kill enemy. Good. Next. But yeah, overall, I would rate Seasons over Aegis, but both of them are kind of on the meh side of Zelda games overall, like in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and it is kind of sad because I don't want to say that they're bad because of it, that they're oddly not memorable. And
Yeah.
and I feel like that I have a better opinion on Awakening now that I've played the Switch version. but I'm not saying that it's good because it got a Switch version. I'm saying that I remember it a bit more because of that. Uh,
Yeah.
and to kind of wrap both of them together, both of the Four Swords games. So both of us did not play it enough to have a good enough score. And my my biggest problem with them was that you kind of need three people to play it. And it's always a bad feeling when you rent a game from a store and you think you're gonna enjoy it, and then you're told you need multiple link cables to play this game properly. And it's like, I have one. I guess we return this to the store. And I think
Yeah.
that's the real reason why I haven't like put any time into it. It's that it takes a lot of setup, it takes multiple people, and when you finally do get into it, it's kind of forgettable. To kind of bring that back around. It's they're neat
Yeah, and I
and I
think
like them, but they're not as interesting as I think Nintendo really wanted them to come off as. They are effectively party games where you play with a bunch of friends in your spare time and then you have fun. But I would never say that that is a plus side to a game. I feel like that should always like come with a caveat of, it's like, just so you know, this was made for the four player experience.
yeah. Um, and another thing is that like um, I think Four Swords originally was on the Game Boy Advance, if I remember that right. Whereas Four
Adventures,
Swords Adventures was that GameCube?
yeah, that one, Four Swords Adventures was GameCube. For
Yeah. So that and I think they came out within like 2 years of each other, right? And I think that was for me that was kind of the time where I didn't really play Zelda to begin with. Um, because I mean, I don't know about y'all out there, but uh, 2002, 2003, 2004, I was busy playing Need for Speed Underground and Underground 2
That's fair.
because those came out in 2003 and 2004.
Uh,
And the moment I got a GameCube, I was playing Need for Speed. I was not concerned with Zelda. So that generation of Zelda games completely passed me by.
I need to figure out when this came out.
I think they were so
Uh,
like they weren't even that well received. Like for at that time, I didn't even know those games existed because I just had like zero interest in Zelda at that time. And just to jump back for a second to the Oracle games, it's actually kind of funny because when I was at my mom's a couple of weeks ago, I actually found my old cartridge of Oracle of Ages. I actually have that here. I did not find the one for Seasons, but I did find the original Oracle of Ages cartridge for the Game Boy.
okay, so I double checked it. Uh, I had the N64 up until 2002. Uh,
Hmm.
in which I then got a GameCube that came with a copy of Sonic Adventure on it. So that would have
Hmm.
been at least in 2003 because it didn't get released until 2003. And I was seriously thinking about it where it's like, man, I was stuck on the N64 not really playing anything uh until the GameCube came out. Like
Yeah.
GameCube is where I really started getting into games. Like the only games I really
Same.
played on the N64 as a kid was the Banjo games, which
Yep.
uh Rayman 2 and
I could never play that.
and whichever all I have to do is just look at the cover of the game and I know exactly which one it is. But I had a racing game on the N64 and I know for a fact that it wasn't
I had a Formula
F-Zero-X.
One racing game on the N64.
Oh, there it is. It's Aerogage. There we go. I had
I don't remember
Aerogage.
that one.
uh
Okay.
that's why it's like I could never remember it because it's the racing game on the N64 that nobody talks about. I hear more people talk
Mm.
about Mickey's Speedway USA than Aero Gosh. Uh
I've never even heard of that one. Um, but no, like for me, the N64 was kind of the. I mean, the N64 was my first console. Even before I had a Game Boy. Funny enough, I got a N64 first and then got a Game Boy, which I think for most people is probably the other way around. Um, so that was kind of my introduction to video games, and then everything else I played later, like NES and SNES games, I only played later, mostly on emulators, not even on the real hardware. But on the N64, I mean, the first two games that I had with my N64 was Mario Kart 64 because it came with the console, and then Ocarina of Time, Super Mario 64, Banjo Kazooie. I never even played Banjo Tooie at that time, funny enough. So yeah, Banjo Kazooie, Rayman 2, I could never play because it had a bug where you couldn't save the game.
yeah, I 100%ed Rayman 2 without being able to save. It was a very fun experience.
I could not. I had one instance, one single instance where it successfully saved, and then I could never get it to save ever again. And so I never finished that damn game. Um, then I remember playing through Donkey Kong 64 with my mom. We played that together. We also played Majora's Mask together. Because she thought that game was too scary for me, funny enough. Although I didn't really think it was scary at all at the time. Although the moon was kind of creepy. Um, and then a big game for me was one that most people probably won't recognize from the name is Lilith Wars. And a lot of people are gonna be like, "What the fuck is Lilith Wars?" Sorry for my swearing. Um, Lilith Wars is the European name for Star Fox 64. I do not know why Nintendo decided to name it something else in Europe, but for some reason it was called Lilith Wars. So when you said Star Fox at the time, I would have had no idea what the heck you were talking about, just from like the name of the game. Like obviously you knew like Star Fox Team is in Lilith Wars. But just like from the name of the game, I would have had no idea, and I didn't know that there was a Star Fox One on like the was it the NES or the SNES? I don't remember.
I believe it's SNES.
Yes, I didn't even know
Was
that
a Zelda,
existed at the time.
sorry, was a Star Fox 1 and then 2, which never fully got released. And then it was uh, the N64 version, which was basically just a remake of Star Fox 1. And then you
Yeah,
had the other remakes
yeah. So
of Star Fox 64.
that was like my games at the time. And then yeah, so to get back to what we were talking about originally with Four Swords, that generation of Zelda games just completely passed me by because I had just gotten the GameCube and I was busy playing other stuff. Like I was playing Pokemon Colosseum, I was playing Metroid Prime. Uh, well, at that time we were also playing Mario Kart Double Dash a lot with my mom, and I absolutely destroyed her in that game. And to this day, she does not want to play Mario Kart with me. Um, I
Uh,
want. Nah, actually, we do. Whenever I bring the Switch over, when we have like family gatherings or whatever, then I we usually play some Mario Kart or maybe Mario Party these days more so. But
Speaking of
yeah, so that Zelda generation just completely missed me because I was busy with more interesting games.
GameCube games, Wind Waker or the Wind Waker. I always forget that there is a pronoun
Yes.
in there. But it's very funny how the first thing I ever heard about Wind Waker is people being disappointed that it was more of a cute experience. And I'm like, on reflection, Wind Waker is probably a game that its aesthetic does a disservice to the actual story it's trying to build. Like, I don't want to say that it's now a bad game because it has that aesthetic. What I'm saying is that the the story that they're trying to tell is actually a pretty dark story, and it feels weird to lump that dark story then into a more cute aesthetic.
Yeah. I mean, I showed you the tech demo earlier. For those of you out there who don't know, there was a Zelda tech demo that was shown at the Space World convention in 2000, where they showed a much, I want to say like a little darker, more realistic looking Zelda game as like a demo for what future consoles would be able to do. And so the general expectation in the public was, okay, this is what the next Zelda game is going to look like. And everyone was hyped up for that because they thought, oh, cool, better graphics, like really nice looking, like this is going to be great. And then out of nowhere, completely without any like fanfare or anything, Nintendo dropped Wind Waker, and everybody hated it because they looked at it. It was like, what is this cell shaded, toony looking garbage? And so Wind Waker got so much hate when it first came out because it was like, this is not what we wanted. Like we wanted the cool looking thing. Like what is this cartoony stuff? Um. So yeah, as you said, the aesthetic does a disservice to the actual like story because the story of Wind Waker is actually kind of good.
I
I mean,
kind of like.
there's something to be said about the whole like sailing aesthetic of it, where it's like you're constantly just sailing between islands, which I guess can become kind of boring to some people. Um, but the story overall, I thought was pretty good. It was just like imagine if you imagine Wind Waker with the graphics of Twilight Princess, I feel people would have reacted a lot differently to that game when it came out.
Which I feel like is very fascinating because I think that Wind Waker is one of those games that people completely 360'd on. Well, I mean 180'd
Yeah,
because 360 means that you wrap around back to the same point. But they completely 180'd on it, where they say that the reason why the game is memorable is because it doesn't. It's a different looking Zelda game, and that makes it charming. The story being dark is now a great tie into it because there is a disconnect between the childhood innocence that the Toon version of Link has in that to the nihilistic viewpoint that Ganondorf shows in the within the
yeah,
story of Wind Waker. And this disconnect shows how out of his depth Link is in that
yeah,
story. And I kind of agree. I would even put it up to a gold, but in my opinion, I still think that Wind Waker as a whole is bogged down by its end game. I feel like running around and getting all the Triforce pieces in Wind Waker is the least exciting thing in a
yeah,
Zelda game because it's not because we talked about
absolutely.
Koroks. What if the Koroks you had to get all 900 to actually finish the game?
Yeah,
And that is why they took out 80% of the actual like challenge of finding the pieces in the re-release on the Wii U. Like that's like a
yep.
whole thing. is that they're like, sorry about that, guys. We will try better.
It's kind of funny because even though um a lot of players initially hated on the game and were like, what the hell is this shit? Um, Wind Waker received really, really good scores. Like Wind Waker is sitting at a 96 of 100 on Metacritic. And Famitsu gave it a perfect score, 40 out of 40. Game Informer back in the day gave it a 10 out of 10. IGN gave it a 9.6. So it came out to really, really great reviews, but people just didn't want to play it.
Yeah, for context, the highest rated game on Metacritic is Ocarina of Time at a 99. Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild is at a 97, and then Wind Waker is at 96. With Tears of the Kingdom also getting a 96, and then Twilight Princess getting a 95. Like that is like the type of margins that we're talking about when it comes to that type of stuff. Majora's Mask also gets a 95. Uh, and then Skyward Sword is the start of the dip with like 93, which is interesting because The Link to the
Yeah.
Past is also one of the games that has a 93. Like you can kind of see that like comparatively to the Sonic franchise, in which there are peaks and valleys when it comes to quality, and those do not correlate with the excitement that people see when content from those games come back. And then you have Pokemon, which is a beloved franchise, but they never get scores above 80. Like, comparatively, Zelda is like always kind of sitting in that 90% range, and it's
Yeah.
almost like every single time a game comes out, everyone goes crazy over them and says this is the greatest game of the console that it's in.
Looking at the best games of all time on Metacritic and seeing Breath of the Wild sit in sixth place with a 97. Um, and then looking further down and finding Metroid Prime 1 in 11th place with a 97 is kind of surprising to me. Like having Metroid Prime that far up ahead of Mario Odyssey
Which
is
honestly,
surprising to me.
I still feel like Mario Odyssey is probably the most fun Mario game, 2D or 3D, that they've ever made. Like I would actually say that that's probably the best Mario game of all
Hmm.
time.
I would actually kind of agree with what people have rated here on Metacritic, where Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2 are above that. I thought the Galaxy games were a lot more fun than Odyssey.
I personally would put Galaxy 1 at like a good like third. Galaxy 2 I completely skipped. I did not care.
Hmm.
Like there's
I
something
thought
about
most of those were pretty good.
I don't know, there was something about Galaxy 2 when it was originally coming out that I just completely did not want to play it, and still to this day I've never actually like sat down to play all of it.
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I'm not really a fan of Mario in general. Like
That's
most
fair.
Mario games, I'm just like, okay, I'll play that once and that's it. But Galaxy 1, when it came out on the Wii, I loved the hell out of that game. That was probably my favorite Mario game ever. I mean, at that time that wasn't hard to beat because the only real competitor it had was Sunshine because
And
F Mario 64. I hated that game.
I've got into arguments with people that like speedrun that game, and I will just go like that game is not good, and they're like this game is amazing, there's no flaws, and I'm like the camera is horrible, and they're like, well,
Which one? 64?
yeah, and it's like, well,
Absolutely.
uh,
100%. Camera in 64 is awful.
and it's like, well, it's a starting N64 game. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Croc in the Legend of the Gobos has a better camera than Mario 64, and technically it came
Ocarina
out
of Time
first.
has a better camera than Mario 64 and they came out almost the same time.
Yeah, it's like is like Mario 64 does not have a good camera. It keeps getting stuck on things. It like uh,
Yeah,
it. I've gotten to many arguments about this. To
yeah,
kind of move away from this topic though, I
yeah.
I am sad I've never actually played Minish Cap. It's one of those games that I've actually added to my games I want to play on stream for a while now. It's just one of those games that I've just never played because it came out at a time where I wasn't able to buy video games. And
When
at the
did that come
time,
out?
the the place that I would rent video games from stopped supplying like handheld games. Like they were only
Mm,
like console games at that time. So when Minish Cap came out, there was no way for me to play it. Uh,
yeah.
conversely, I rented Twilight Princess a total of I think 5 times, and I managed to beat
Damn.
the game over the
Okay.
course of the 5 times I rented it.
Yeah, for me, Minish Cap, I think I can't even see what the EU release was. I can only see one for UK and Ireland, which was November 2004. Um, that is another one of those games that just fell into that time frame where I just did not care about Nintendo games because I was busy with Need for Speed.
It's actually kind of interesting because there was like a whole article about like the differences between the European version than every other version of the game. So apparently
Hmm.
that's something I should actually look into because
Yeah, I'm not even aware of that. Like I said, I never played it. It came
hmm,
out in like 2004, 2005. So that was right when I was busy with Underground 2 and then Most Wanted and then Carbon. Because at that point we had a banger of a Need for Speed game every damn year. And I mean, granted, people will probably
oh, that's
yell
funny.
at me for saying that Need for Speed Carbon was a good game, but it on the GameCube it was. Like I don't know, the PC version may have been bad. But the game I played all the Need for Speed games on GameCube, which for a lot of people probably seems odd. Like, why would you play a racing game on the GameCube when you could have played it on PC? I did not have a good PC at the time, but I did have a GameCube. And the GameCube had the advantage of having analog triggers, unlike the PS2, which I believe did not. Did the PS2 have analog triggers?
Uh,
Or were they just buttons? I don't remember.
for the
I never
P
had a PS2, so I wouldn't
I
know.
thought the PS1 was the one that had buttons and the PS2 was the one that had the triggers that like had like different like amounts that pressed down, so like it would know that if you pressed it hard, pressed it slow, or pressed it halfway. And the only reason why I know that is because
Mm,
I've played The Bouncer, because I have to pronounce that name correctly with the space and the emphasis. Um, because like the whole like if you've never played The Bouncer, you to do certain combos you would go like half press on left, full press on right, quick press on left,
mm,
and I'm like, oh my gosh, this
okay.
game.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I never. Full disclosure, I never ever had a single PlayStation console. Like I was a Nintendo kid through and through, so I have no idea. Um, but the GameCube did have those analog triggers that were actually like responsive to like how far you press them down. Which I believe the in the PS2 controller it was still buttons. They didn't have the triggers yet, but the buttons were like responsive to how you pressed them. Um, but yeah, with the GameCube you had a lot finer control over like speed in racing games. So all of my like Need for Speed games were GameCube. And that was like that span from 2003 all the way to 2006 because we had Underground, Underground 2, Most Wanted, and Carbon. And so during that time, I was playing like nothing else on the GameCube or on Game Boy or anything. Like I came home, I played Need for Speed. So that was like my Nintendo game free um kind of phase where I just completely missed anything and everything that came from Nintendo because I just did not care at all. So yeah, Minish Cap and Four Swords and all of those all kind of passed me by. I kind of want to play Minish Cap. I mean, it was on the Game Boy Advance, so I could just throw it in an emulator and just play it that way. Sorry, don't sue me, Nintendo. I
Uh,
promise
it's
I'm
also on
not gonna actually do it.
it's also on the Nintendo-owned emulator on
Actually,
the
I still
Switch
have
as
a Game
well.
Boy. Oh yeah, true. It is on Virtual Console or like Switch Online or whatever the hell they want to call it these days. But I do actually still have I do have an original DS. I could just play it on that because it was an advanced game, so technically I could play it on the original DS if I could find a cartridge. I
This
don't know if I want to dig that up
I
though.
don't think I've ever mentioned this, but like most of the games that I got onto the DS, were games that I did not purchase. They were mostly games that I ended up acquiring from other people because they did not want to hold on to the game any longer. Uh, and that is how I played
Yeah,
all of my DS games for a while. I
for
think,
me the DS existed for one game and one game alone, and that was Pokemon. That was the only thing I
yeah,
played on the DS. I literally have not a single other DS game from the original DS other than Pokemon.
I
Like later
think,
on when the 3DS came out, I got the Zeldas and I got the whatever the hell. I think I had it like an Advance Wars or something.
the only
But for me, the DS, all versions of the DS were a Pokemon delivery system and nothing else.
the only game I ever purchased for I ever had like a purchased copy, a personally purchased copy, was um was Platinum, and that's the only one. All the other games I acquired by means other than buying them. In fact, I think it's been 10 years. Uh, I believe what happened was that my first copy of Professor Layton, I think I just outright stole from someone. I don't remember how I got it. Uh, Either way, it's just really funny to think about like, man, I really did not have too many like DS games.
It is actually kind of funny. I rescind my earlier statement. The original DS was not a Pokemon delivery system. The original DS, the only Pokemon I actually played on the original DS was Diamond and Pearl. I didn't even play Black and White and Black and White 2.
That's fair.
I
I
did have actually I did have Platinum, but I did not have Black and White or Black and White 2. Like I completely missed those. And I also completely missed Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
uh
Like
part
my Pokemon on DS part starts, I think, with Diamond and Pearl, and then I think X and Y weren't they already on the 3DS?
which one?
X and Y.
X and Y were the ones for the 3DS, yeah. And then it
Yeah,
was Sun
that
and
that's
Moon.
when my that's when my Pokemon on DS phase started. I was still busy playing Game Boy Advance versions before then.
It's actually kind of funny because this era of like video games for me is like kind of hazy, but then again most of my life at that point was kind of hazy. Uh I just find it kind of funny how it's like the one Zelda game that started me really enjoying the series. Because I think I may have mentioned this before. The first Zelda game I ever played was actually Twilight Princess. And
Mm,
I honestly think that it being my first Zelda game probably is the reason why I'm such a fan of it to this day. It's still an incredibly well-made story that has everything you could ever really want in a Zelda game. It's got
yeah,
it's got a unique play style for half of the game, and it has probably some of the most memorable characters in the whole series,
yeah,
and some of the most memorable designs for the characters. Like still to this day, uh, I firmly believe that the reason uh, why modern Link has that sort of like a tunic with the that design of the tunic where he's got where he has the chainmail underneath it is directly because of Twilight Princess. Like that version of Link
yeah.
is so iconic that the only one that is more iconic might actually be the version of Link from Ocarina, the young Link from Ocarina of Time. It
Yeah. For me personally, just to put into perspective, like Twilight Princess is the 3D Zelda I gave my platinum to.
yeah,
It is, in my opinion, the best Zelda of all time, hands down. It's not even a competition. Like no other Zelda game even gets close to Twilight Princess, especially Twilight Princess HD. 'Cause I love the HD remaster. Um, Twilight Princess is the only game that I ever specifically purchased a console for just to play that game. Because if you'll remember, Twilight Princess came out simultaneously for the Wii and the GameCube. And it was a launch title on the Wii. Um, and I was originally gonna get it for the GameCube. And then that was still like at the time where my mom and I were kind of playing games together, but we've kind of moved on from playing like Majora's Mask and whatnot to like playing stuff on PC together. Um, and then we saw an ad for Twilight Princess. And for the first time, we saw like the whole thing with the motion controls and all that. And I thought that was so sick. Like I saw myself standing in the living room with like swinging my freaking Wiimote around, like that was like I wanted that game so bad. And but I was originally gonna get it for GameCube. And then my mom saw that and she was like, "Oh, that looks cool. Oh, let's go get that." And I was like, "Yeah, but the whole motion thing, like that's only on the new console. Like we don't get that if we get that for the GameCube." She was like, "Huh." And then 30 minutes later, we stood in like the toy store and bought a Wii just so we could play Twilight Princess. That's how friggin' hyped I was for that game. I was like, I want that game and I want it with the motion thing because I want to stand there and swing my sword. Like, I was so hyped for that game. And like everything about I really seriously cannot think of one bad thing about Twilight Princess.
like
That game is perfect, in my opinion.
I could think of like one or two parts that are lacking, but not parts that are bad. I played the GameCube version, mostly because that was the console I had at the time, and
Yeah.
still to this day, I never feel like going to the Wii version, just because the biggest problem with the Wii version is that everything in the game is flipped, because Link
Yeah.
has always been left-handed, but since most people
Yep.
are right-handed, they changed it
Yep.
so that everything was now flipped over, so that people playing on the
Yes.
Wii would be able to see things accordingly. And instead of just, changing his model, they literally just flipped the entire game.
That was the weirdest thing for me when the first time I played the GameCube version. It was like this is not the world I remember. Because suddenly Lake Hylia is on the left, the Great Bridge is on the right, and I'm like, huh? Like I don't recognize this world anymore. Like everything is backwards. I hate that.
If anything, it's kind of funny
Because I was
because
like so used to the Wii version.
if anything, it is uh I heard one person put that the Wii version of the game is kind of like the Master Quest version of the game, because in uh I forget which game does this, but in the Master Quest version, everything is just flipped horizontally in the game, and I'm like, that is kind of funny how that ended up working like that.
I don't remember that. Some of the Master Quest for Ocarina of Time has like completely different dungeons.
Yeah,
Like they are all like weirdly, like they have like weird stuff going on. Like like OOT Master Quest is like the fucked up version of OOT,
yeah,
where
like
like the dungeons are kind of weird.
so many things about Zelda directly come from either Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess, and you could probably follow the lineage of which games come from uh which aesthetics come from which based off of those games. Like, not even
Mm,
talking about the Wind Waker like timeline games that all look like it to literally denote the fact that it is from that timeline.
mm,
When we talk about like uh Zelda, uh I always bring up Hyrule Warriors, like because that is the Zelda game that I have unironically put the most time and love into because it's just
mm.
it is unironically the longest game of all time. Uh, 500 hours in, and I'm only just now getting the tier 2 weapons in the game out of like the tier 5 weapons that actually
Oh
like
god.
enhance the characters. And
Yeah.
the funniest thing about it is it's not even uh is that I think about it and it's like, what is Zelda known for in that game? Zelda is known for having a bow and arrow, and the only reason why that's a thing is because of Twilight Princess. Well,
Yeah.
technically, she gives light arrows have always been a gift that she has given to people, but the reason why people remember that she uses the bow is because of Twilight Princess, and then you have Link's design in that game, which is the tunic with the chainmail under it, which also comes from Twilight Princess. And then you have
Which is
Ganondorf's
funny.
design with like
Um
with the swords. And then it's like, yep, that's it was like him he is only really well known for using a sword in technically he's known for using a sword in Ocarina of Time actually. It's just the design of the swords are from that, and then actually, no, I would have to give that to Ocarina of Time then, because it's the specific type of sword that he's known for.
Mhm. Yeah, I get what you mean. The thing is the funny thing is, Zelda being known for using the bow coming from Twilight Princess is kind of ironic because the first time she did that was in Wind Waker.
Yeah. Again,
Because the Wind Waker boss fight actually has her shooting Ganondorf with light arrows.
the light arrows weren't just a thing uh in Twilight Princess, and I will admit that, but it is really funny to think about how like the aesthetic of those games are directly affiliated with Twilight Princess at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like Twilight Princess I don't think even now that we've had a couple of more games after it, no other Zelda game gets close to Twilight Princess. Not even remotely. Like
Eh,
Twilight Princess is just so good. I mean, I love the whole like Link turns into a wolf aesthetic. I mean, of course, hello furry. Um, to the point where I still wish that Nintendo would go back to that idea
Honestly,
and give us different links. I mean, we've had it in Majora's Mask, kind of with the transformation masks. I want that mechanic again, where Link is a Rito.
yeah, I
I want
kind
Rito Link.
uh honestly, I was debating on if I wanted to include that when I talked about the the hypothetical third game in the open world Zelda series being based off of a link to the either a link to the past or the Ocarina of Time slash Majora's Mask. And honestly, like if they did something with like mask transformations in that game, it would be really fascinating. But I think it is
To
kind
me,
of funny.
it doesn't even have to be like transformation. Just make Link a Rito, and then make a game where like he's a Zora. Like make themed games for like the different races of Hyrule. Like who says Link always has to be a Hylian?
I mean,
Like
like
make him a Zora, make him a Goron, make him a Rito. I mean, maybe not a Gerudo because that kind of gets in the way with like how Ganondorf works.
um,
But
I
like,
I think I may have
just
mentioned this at
make
some
make
point.
spin-offs like that maybe, or
Yeah,
just even make it in a mainline game. Like why not? Who cares?
I think I may have mentioned it at some point, but I wrote a story once in which the whole concept of the game was that well, the entire concept of the story is that uh the Triforce pieces are given to the different people that are prophesied. So Zelda has the Triforce of power, Link has the Triforce of wisdom,
Hmm.
and the main character for the story, which is the reincarnation of Ganondorf, gets the Triforce of courage. And it's his whole thing where he is now
Ah,
this like young kid being brought before an older Link and Zelda who view him as an enemy before like anything goes down, but because of the alignment change with the Triforce, he's a different person. Like almost entirely.
ah,
I don't think I ever
that's
really
an interesting
published it,
concept.
but it's a fascinating concept I've come back to a few times and I've attempted to actually finish writing it, but
It actually sounds interesting.
much like
I would
the
like to
other
see that.
stories I've written, I have not actually published it.
But yeah, to dwell on Twilight Princess a little bit more. Um, I think with Twilight Princess they struck a unique balance where just everything worked out perfectly. The dungeons are fun. The overall world design is great. The aesthetics are great. Like Twilight Princess is kind of what people wished Wind Waker was aesthetically, because that was kind of the game that we saw in the tech demo. It was like that's the kind of Zelda we wanted. Something that looked like not all cutesy and cartoony, but like a little bit dark and gritty and like just more serious. And I think they executed that perfectly. And I mean, you can see that in the storyline where like you have that section where Midna is like dying or whatever, and then you have to bring her to Zelda, and like she sacrifices herself and all that stuff. Um, so that I don't know, it just worked out so well. I mean, there's an argument to be made that the motion controls were kind of janky. I mean, they were in all Wii games, in my opinion. Um, but I feel like they were just I want to say they weren't so reliant on them as they were in later games. I mean, if we remember the next mainline Zelda game after Twilight Princess was Skyward Sword.
Y-
Probably the most hated Zelda game of all time, even more so than Wind Waker.
Yeah, and like I still enjoy a Skyward Sword, but mostly on a like story writing level than a an actual like gameplay level. Because I
Yeah.
feel like that uh next to Twilight Princess, it's probably my like second, maybe third favorite Zelda story in the entire franchise, and it literally
Ooh.
comes down to the ceiling of Zelda scene later on into the game.
Hmm.
But like you'll notice that we immediately skip past well, Fountain Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, and that's mostly because even though I've
We
given it a
didn't play
score,
either of those.
yeah, neither of us have really played the game to completion, and
Yeah.
it is kind of awkward to kind of sit there and go like, oh man, I kind of liked this part of Phantom Hourglass when I haven't
Yeah.
even really played it enough to really know if it really does capitalize on what it's trying to do. So, to kind of skip both of those into Skyward Sword, though, I gave it a gold and you gave it a silver. And
Yep.
I'm gonna guess that you gave it a silver strictly because of the gameplay.
Um. Yeah. For the most part, yeah, I gave it a silver mostly because, like I said earlier, um, I felt that Skyward Sword was too reliant on the very janky motion controls. It got better when Nintendo released the Motion Plus, like that little add-on you could clip between your Wii mode and the whatever it was called, the nunchuck. Uh,
Yeah,
that
the
like improved the accuracy of the motion controls because it had like a better gyroscope or whatever. Um, but anyone who's ever played the Girahim fight in Skyward Sword will probably agree with me that that was the worst boss fight in any Zelda game ever. Because after about the fourth or fifth time that he grabs your sword between his fingers and goes like, haha, you can't move now because I'm controlling your sword, probably makes you want to throw your Wiimote at the TV and be like, F this game.
um I
Because
still
that was the only fight in any Zelda game ever that actually made me rage quit. I hate Girahim with the with the fire of a thousand suns. That was the worst boss fight I have ever experienced.
like to kind of go back to Twilight Princess for a second. Uh I still consider it to have some of the best dungeons and best boss fights of any Zelda game. Like
Yeah.
Arbiter's Ground is still like my favorite dungeon and boss fight. It is
Yeah.
just an amazing part of the game. I still think about Snow Peak every once in a while with its ambience and the very maze-like structure to the dungeon. And
Yeah.
like I still think about it sometimes. But like when I talk to people about the dungeons in Skyward Sword, people that even hate the game like light up and they go, "Oh no, like the Skyward Sword dungeons are like some of the most solid dungeons in the entire franchise." Like people will still talk about the Ancient Cistern to this day about like how good thematically and design-wise it is. Where it's like you get through the dungeon and then
Agreed.
someone goes, just so you know, this has a lot of like symbolism to it, and and then people look at it again and go like, "Oh, this whole dungeon is a Buddhist allegory," and like, yeah, it's actually really well put together. And then you have
Yeah.
the sand desert where you go from
The sand ship.
yeah the sand ship where well
Yeah.
technically the entire like complex where it's you go through the uh you get introduced to the time crystals, and then you go through the factory, and then you come out of the factory into the ancient lake, to then sail around onto it, to then go to the ship, that you then have a boss fight with the pirate, with the captain of the pirate ship on that ship. The entire like structure of it is very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite parts of Skyward Sword. And again, like if Skyward Sword had just stuck to how Twilight Princess used the motion controls and not try to make it fancy, like you have to slash from a certain direction to do this thing or whatever, and it just done it the same way that Twilight Princess have done it, I felt like the game would have been a lot better. Or at least a lot less frustrating. Because at that point in time, the motion controls were just like the accuracy of the motion controls was just not there. Um,
Which is
which is
why
funny because if you play Skyward Sword HD, you don't have that problem because the motion controls um, on the Switch are a lot better.
yeah, and like even though people still to this day don't like motion controls, like I will still like every once in a while use motion controls when it comes to Breath of the Wild. And
Yeah, I mean in Breath of the Wild, the same as Skyward Sword HD. Um, in Breath of the Wild, it works because the gyros in the Joy Cons are very solid compared to the stupid Motion Plus on the Wii.
yeah. If I remember correctly, the Zelda controller that came with the game, the golden one, has a Wii Motion Plus inside the controller, which was one of the reasons why like longtime Zelda fans, when they bought that copy of the game, didn't actually enjoy it too much. Because
I
the Wii
don't
Motion
remember
Plus,
that one.
huh?
I don't remember that one actually. I don't remember that controller.
Yeah, it's the golden one with the Wind Waker symbol like right next to the speaker. I would know
Huh.
because that's the one that my roommate still has
I
to
mean,
this day. Uh
I had the black Wii U with the Zelda style. That
hmm.
had like a black Wii U pad with like golden trim and whatever, and it also had a golden, like a black and gold Wiimote. But I don't remember that other controller. Like the one that I had was, let me see if I can find a picture of it real quick. And I'll send you this real quick. This is the one that I had.
Oh, the Wii U pad. Yeah. I was more
Yeah,
thinking
that
about
that's the one that I had.
the Wii U control. Sorry, the Wii controller. That
I don't think I even had a controller for the Wii. Like I only had Wii modes. I don't think we ever had a like a quote
yeah.
unquote
Sorry,
pro controller.
it was a golden Wiimote with
Hmm.
with that symbol on it.
Did we have that? I don't remember.
One of
Oh, I know the one. I know the one you're talking about. I don't think I had that one. I had I think for Wiimotes, we just had the default black ones. Because funny enough, we actually bought two Wiis, and to this day, I do not recall why we did that. We had the original Wii, the white one, and then when a black one came out that had the Motion Plus, we bought another one. I don't know why, but we had two Wiis, and then I gave my mom the white one, and I took the black one because I thought the black one looked cooler. So we had a white Wii and a black Wii, and a Wii U. Like that was at a time where we actually just like spent a lot of money on like gaming stuff for some odd reason.
uh the other uh The one thing I will say about Skyward Sword is that even if you go into the game kind of less than charitable, I have seen people
Mm.
go out the other side of Skyward Sword and basically go, the ending stuck the landing, which I did not expect. And I feel like
Yeah.
story-wise, it's just super solid. Especially with
Yes, story-wise, it's pretty good.
since it's also like the earliest story in the actual like timeline of the series, it ends up being this really it ends up being this really great uh this really great origin story for the universe.
Yeah, it did a
And
pretty good job at like starting off this like explaining the origins of the series. One thing I kind of regret with Skyward Sword HD is that I never got the Skyward Sword HD Joy-Cons because those actually look pretty cool. I like the like blue and like purple-ish contrast. I wish I would have gotten those.
yeah, it's to kind of round out both Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess is I do not think that the Wii, to me at least, ruins the experience of either game. But I would say that a lot of people feel that way, and I can understand why. There is
Mm.
there is something significant about uh the Wii when it comes to some people say that when a game is on the Wii, it has a like optimism it has a an optics buff to it. I would say that the N64 is a little
Mm.
bit more like that, where people will be a little bit more charitable to a game that is on the N64, uh, because that's the
Compared to
game that
what?
they, huh?
Compared to what?
Uh, Compared to a game that's like on the GameCube, which I feel like
Mm.
it's very interesting how it's like, you can kind of see this for both consoles, where if a game came out on the GameCube, they're a little bit less charitable to it, like in modern day.
Mm.
If the game came out onto the N64, they're a little bit more charitable to it. And I feel like the Wii is one of those consoles where you can have both be a thing. Where
Mm.
you have both people that are a little bit more charitable if it's on the Wii because they know that it had technical limits, and people that are a little bit less charitable because they have to interact with the motion controls. And I don't think that either game is ruined for having motion controls, but I would say that it is a fascinating look at what Nintendo was thinking about when it came to gameplay, not just story.
Mm.
I would still like to condense all my thoughts. I feel like uh I still feel like that both of the games worth worth playing. Like I do not feel like either game is bad, but I feel because of its motion controls, I would just prefer to play it on any other system than one with motion controls. And I'm someone that actually enjoys
Mm.
motion controls in games.
I feel like for me, it kind of depends on what I played first. So seeing that I played Twilight Princess first on Wii and then on GameCube, or well, on GameCube emulator, but whatever. Um, for me, Twilight Princess with motion controls is just the default, and I feel like the game executed that very well because the motion controls weren't like overly complicated. It was just you swing your sword left and right, and you like aim the bow, and that's pretty much it. Like you aim the bow, you aim the grappling hook, and that's it. Like everything else was kind of old school, quote unquote. Like you didn't use motion controls to turn the camera or anything, like outside of aiming. Like that was all still done with the stick and the Z button and all that, like as you knew from like the older games. Um, and so for me, having Twilight Princess with motion controls is kind of the default. And so that's how I will always remember the game, and I thought it was perfect like that. Skyward Sword, I cannot play the original Skyward Sword on the Wii because it will make me rage quit because the motion controls are so bad. Whereas Skyward Sword HD on the Switch, I can play no problem because the motion controls are accurate enough that it actually properly recognizes which direction I'm slashing from and like doesn't mess it up 90% of the time like the original game did. That being said, there were other points in Skyward Sword that kind of um, sullied the experience a little bit for me. The dousing mechanic with the sword I thought was super boring. Like I didn't like that at all. It was fun like the first few times, and then they just kept reusing it throughout the whole game, and I was like, can we just do anything else, please? And then the fact that you had to fight the same boss in like different variations 3 times throughout the game. I was like, oh hey, the imprisoned is breaking out. Okay, I'll seal it back. Okay, go do this other thing, finish this dungeon, come back. Hey, it's breaking out again, seal again. I'm like, okay, fight the same stupid thing again, but this time it has legs. Or like this time it has the arms, or whichever came first, I don't know. And then like having to do that fight 3 times just felt tedious because it changed just as like just enough to not be totally the same, but it didn't change enough to make it interesting the third time around. So that's probably like that and the Girahim fight are probably my least favorite parts of Skyward Sword. And seeing as neither of that was really changed in the HD remake, uh, I can't give Skyward Sword anything higher than the silver.
That's fair. Uh, so it's really interesting because I was looking to kind of skip ahead a little bit. Triforce Heroes, we neither of us really played. But when I was looking at
Yeah.
the list of of Metacritic ratings of Zelda games, I did notice it was all the way down at the bottom. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks. It's like one of the worst
Hmm.
reviewed like Zelda games, but it's still at like a 60%.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I never played it, so I really
It's another
can't
one of those
comment on that much.
it's another one of those games where you had to have multiple people play for it to be a good
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so Link Between Worlds. I gave this my platinum for 2D Zelda games. And
Mm.
I I mentioned before, it really does come down to how much you enjoy the aesthetic of a dark world. And I kind of like the fact that you have Yuga, which is this mirrored reflection of Ganondorf, both in terms of how they use the concept of the Triforce of Power and how they're going about trying to take over the world to Low Rule's entire vibe. And then you have Hilda, which is the opposite version of Zelda, and her interpretation of what it takes for her to be the guardian of Low Rule. compared to Zelda's opinion of that same role. And it all boils
Yeah.
down to Ravio, which is this little thief guy just running around being kind of weird, but at the same time, you also know that this is the counterpart of Link. And to be fair, both of them are not really too much different between each other. Like, at the end of the day. And it's kind of fascinating to kind of look at those characters as a microcosm of a corruption of the base concepts of the character bent in a different direction. And I
Mm.
fundamentally like that as like from a like symbolic perspective of those character archetypes within the series. And it's why I kind of like Link Between the World, Link Between Worlds a lot. The thing that's going to get people to not like it as much, I completely understand, is what you have to do to go in between those worlds because
Yeah.
the cracks are a little bit weird, and the actual like painting mechanic where you go onto the wall to like shimmy around to get around obstacles wears thin very quickly. But
Yeah.
I feel like that it's still just as solid as A Link to the Past. Like when it comes to the actual like gameplay and combat. It's just with those added features that I really enjoyed about it.
Mm. Yeah, so I gave it a gold. 'Cause, yeah, because mostly of those aspects that it carried over from Link to the Past. But yeah, the painting mechanic personally I didn't really like. And I feel like that's kind of what most people would say when I talk about this game. About points that I didn't like was that mechanic was kind of after a while. Like, okay, cool, I'm merging into another wall, yay, going through another crack, okay. It's like it feels overused after a while. But then again, it's kind of the game's whole gimmick. So it's like, yeah, of course they're going to use that every chance they get. But eventually, it like becomes the main thing they focus on to like solve puzzles. Like, oh, there's a crack in the wall somewhere. You just need to find it. And I feel like that kind of got boring after a while. Um, and looking at the awards that this game was nominated for and which ones it won, I feel like gameplay was not um the number one focus. Like yeah, it got a couple of Game of the Years, but it's mostly 3DS Game of the Year. So it didn't get overall Game of the Year. For IGN, it got overall Best Music, but the only other things that it won are like Best 3DS, whatever. So it wasn't overall like too well received at the time, I think, even though it got kind of all right ratings depending on which outlets you look at. There's a few outliers that rated it kind of low, whereas most kind of gave it like a 9 ish. I think the worst ones were Destructoid and like Computer Games Magazine, which gave it a 6 out of 10 and a 6.5 out of 10. So yeah, I don't know. It had good ratings. Overall it's a good game. It had some room for improvement, but yeah, overall it's solid. I just didn't like the paintings.
I I will admit that, but again, like when we're talking about 2D compared to 3D, it I'm gonna put a lot more 3D games above 2D games, and that's just my
Same.
bias of liking
Yeah,
3D
no,
games
same.
more than 2D games.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Uh, so before we talk about Breath of the Wild, like in depth, we have to kind of talk about Echoes of Wisdom, which is that, which is the parallel to A Link to the Past. And you might think
Mm,
that you go A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, and then Echoes of Wisdom. You have this sort of three games. The first game does really well. The second game falters a little bit. I personally like the story of A Link Between Worlds a little bit more than A Link to the Past, but that's just me on a personal level.
mm,
Echoes of Wisdom is the first Zelda game since Twilight Princess that I have missed the launch of. And that's
mm.
not even talking about like Spirit Tracks because Found Miracles and Spirit Tracks don't count. I have played all of these games except for yeah, also Triforce Heroes. But I have gotten all of these games on launch.
Mm.
Echoes of Wisdom is the first game that I missed out on since Twilight Princess. And and the only reason why Twilight Princess doesn't factor in, to be honest, is I actually just realized how low of the list it is since I'm also excluding Twilight Princess, because technically I was playing it through renting it. Uh,
Mm.
Echoes of Wisdom, though, is kind of an interesting parallel because you have Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which are Zelda 1 and 2, and then you have Echoes of Wisdom, which takes the same concepts from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and applies it to A Link to the Past. And I think that they did it a disservice. I feel like that there is not enough to go on. Like, I tried to have someone explain to me the story of Echoes of Wisdom, and they shrugged.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's a bigger problem with the last three Zelda games in total, is that there just is not enough story to go around. They more want interesting puzzles that can be completed in a myriad of ways, scattered amongst the world, than actually making a good story. I will always think about Twilight Princess as like one of the greatest like stories that they've ever written.
yeah,
And that game is quite linear for being a Zelda game. But
true.
you talk about the last three Zelda games, and they're all very open-ended, and they kind of falter because of that. Especially when they put it into the format of A Link to the Past. And it's why
Mm.
I gave it a silver and you gave it a bronze. So
Yeah. It is the only bronze I gave other than Oracle of Ages and Seasons. Um, the whole game mechanic of like making echoes of things and like using them for traversal and stuff. That was I saw the trailer and I was like, pass. Like, really just not an interesting game in any way, shape, or form. Which is ironic because apparently people think otherwise because it has an 85 of 100 on Metacritic, 92% on OpenCritic, and it has like a bunch of really good ratings from all the kinds of different outlets. So I'm like, I don't know. They seem to have liked it. I did not. I thought it was boring. I did not like that mechanic. I did not like the concept of playing as Zelda
it's the
because
first,
that breaks tradition,
and again,
and I don't like that.
excluding Triforce Heroes, it's the first game since Skyward Sword that I've seen like the Zelda community talk to death about a Zelda game every single time it gets released.
Hmm.
And Triforce Heroes is the exception because it was on the 3DS. But well, sorry, no, that it was a multiplayer game on the 3DS. Everything since Skyward Sword has been picked clean to death by like people on YouTube. Once Echoes of Wisdom came out, I
Yeah.
saw nobody talk about it. And I think that is highly indicative
All right.
of how oddly mediocre the game is. It's not bad,
Yep.
it's mediocre. And I think that that's a fair distinction.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Uh, so let's break down as a whole the reason why, even though I give it a gold, I think Breath of the Wild is still a little bit lacking. So there is a point in Tears of the Kingdom that I reached in my playthrough of it in which I realized that I did things out of order, which should not be a problem in a game that is open ended. And at that point, I went back and I started thinking about everything in Breath of the Wild, and I thought about what is the anticipated order of Breath of the Wild.
Hmm.
And it usually goes in Breath of the Wild, you have to leave the plateau and then you head to uh uh you head to Sheikah Village because you have to talk to Impa. You then
Yeah, you go to Kakariko.
wait, did I say Sheikah Village? I meant
Yeah,
Kakariko.
you did.
I was thinking of Rito Village. You then leave to go to each of the four divine beasts. Each one, by the time that you reach the area, is a self-enclosed story in and of itself. And that works out very well because once you complete all four of those, you then go and get the master sword, and then you are right next to the castle. So you then go into the castle with all four of the races aiding you, and you go in, you climb to the top, you face Ganon, and because you've completed the four divine beasts, you have an easier time with the boss. That's just that's just known. But I was really thinking about it, and between each of those stages is about like 4 or 5 hours of just dead air between each of those steps because they
Yeah.
want you to explore the world around you, and the world is in fact filled with a lot of side quests. It's filled with all the shrines that you can go to. You could also use them to teleport to different places, so they're also useful for marking how far into the game you are. You have all of the side stuff that happens inside of the actual stables. You have you have a lot of the cooking stuff that you can do, and a lot of the stuff with that. You have the different armor sets that you can find around the world, both that you can buy and that you can find. You have the different labyrinths that you can go into for an extra challenge, and you have the actual like challenge island that you can go to. And I was really thinking about it, and Breath of the Wild is a great game if you do not anticipate immediately beelining the story. And I feel like, comparatively, that is why it is better than Tears of the Kingdom, is that the structure is actually based around it being open-ended.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, for me, Breath of the Wild, I mean, obviously it kind of broke tradition with how Zelda used to be before then. Um, I like the idea of like being able to go anywhere and do anything at any time. Um, but for me, um, the lack of proper dungeons, I don't want to say kind of ruined it for me, but I missed having proper dungeons in Breath of the Wild because the divine beasts really weren't interesting. Like they were just kind of too easy. They were like boring for the most part. It's like, oh, you gotta do some like you gotta put some water here to like spin this thing, and then it opens, and I can go there. It's like, that's just not interesting to me. Like I wanted like proper dungeons, and the Divine Beasts were just not that. So that's probably my biggest negative about Breath of the Wild. It's just the lack of proper dungeons and like the lack of like story direction, I want to say. Um, Whereas Tears of the Kingdom had a lot more story direction, kind of. But it disappointed me in the way that you could end up doing the story in quote unquote the wrong order. And because of Nintendo being Nintendo, they allow you to do things in the wrong order, but then the game doesn't react to you doing things in the wrong order. So Link finds out certain aspects of the story, but then continues to act as though he has no idea. And everyone around him also reacts like nobody knows what's going on. Um, I mean, at this point, I can probably talk about it without spoiling it for anyone, because I mean, like, if you haven't played Tears of the Kingdom at this point, then that's your own fault. Like the game allows you to find out what happened to Zelda by like getting certain memories and like getting the Master Sword and all that before you like resolve the story itself. Um, and so you could get to a point where you already know the big plot twist, being that the Zelda that's being spotted around Hyrule is a fake. You would already know that because you know that the real Zelda is the dragon. But nobody, like Link doesn't communicate that to anyone, and nobody else in the world communicates that either. So it's like when you then get to the point where you experience that plot twist, and it's like, haha, this Zelda's a fake. It's like, obviously, I've known this for like 10 hours of gameplay now. Like, why is everyone acting so surprised? Like, Link should have known that already because I've already solved that part of the story. But then the game just doesn't react to it, and the entire story falls flat on its ass and just boring at that point. It's like, okay, you were too lazy to like put in a variable that tells the game to do something different when you already found that the Zelda is fake. Womp womp.
I
But yeah, I think that's my biggest complaint about Tears of the Kingdom as well.
uh because to kind of explain once again, if you've never heard me explain this or seen my playthrough of it, my way of playing through Tears of the Kingdom went exactly like this, where uh I was curious about the depths. So I was trying to uncover everything in the depths first. And
Yep.
I was so ready to just like explore everything and just put everything on the back burner for such a long time in my playthrough that I wasn't even really considering doing the other like things. So I was doing the dungeons in relative order that they wanted me to, which was go to the Rito village and then go uh Goron, then yeah, first you would have to do the Rito village because it's the one that is directly pointed at first, and then it's Goron village since it's right there, and then I did what was it? Uh,
I did Zora next.
then Zora. Yeah, that's what I did too. And then and then I did the Gerudo, which honestly feels like the order that you should, because that's the relative order that the difficulty feels like.
Yeah, I think I did Rito first, then Zora, then Goron. I always do Gerudo last. Just because in the early game you don't really have um clothing with heat protection to even go into the desert without dying.
Yeah.
So I always do that last once we have like clothes with a heat protection, or like have like meals that make you stay cool or whatever. So Gerudo always happened last for me.
The interesting thing though is what happened afterwards. So while I was doing all that, I ended up uncovering the part of the in the depths where you can, yeah, where you can uncover the part of the depths that is right next to the Great Deku Tree. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I can't actually like get onto there until I'm in the Lost Woods. So I go into the Lost Woods, and the first thing that they say to me is, "Oh, do you not know where the Master Sword is?" And I basically go like, "Not really." And they point me to the Light Dragon that's up there, and it's like, "Oh, that's where that is." And I'm like, "Oh, that's what the dragon's been doing as it's been going around." Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. So I then immediately get the Master Sword from the dragon, even though that should be step 3 in the whole thing after you then go. Uh, so, because the order that you're supposed to be in is uh, you're supposed to find, you're supposed to go and encounter the fake Zelda. Then you're supposed to do all of the uh dragon memories, and then you're supposed to go to the Great Deku Tree to get the to start the uh and either then go to the Great Deku Tree to find out a way to track down uh the Light Dragon, or just like figure it out on your own. And so I'm sitting there as I uncover the as I then uncover the Light Dragon, and it completely glosses over me of what they're telling me, luckily, so it didn't really spoil the story for me too much. But it's still really awkward to think about uh how I kind of ruined my experience because I did one thing instead of the other. And at the end of the day, like I even like said that I might actually just redo my entire playthrough of the game just to have a better experience with that. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad to think that you could play an open-ended game wrong. And it's why the game instantly soured for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it was like due to the relative lack of like linear story where you can just run around the world for the hours on end without like doing anything worthwhile for the story. When you get to that big turning point in the story, which is haha, Zelda's a fake, the real Zelda is a dragon. Um, if you already uncovered that due to having gotten all the memories before you like figured out the rest of the stuff, or like even The twist where it's like, oh, we're missing a fifth stage. I wonder where that other stage is. Meanwhile, you already discovered the construct factory and the spirit temple in the depths, where you already know, yeah, there's another dungeon. Obviously, we're missing a stage. Um, if you've already discovered those things before the game wants you to, and then the game doesn't react to the fact that you already know that, I don't know, like I said, the story just falls flat and it immediately becomes uninteresting because you already know what's gonna happen before it happens. It's like, ooh, Zelda's at the castle, we should follow her. And it's like, no, this is obviously a trap, and we know it's a trap, but we don't communicate that it's a trap. So everyone thinks we're going to find the real Zelda. Whereas Link, at that point, should have already known, hey, this is not the real Zelda. This is obviously a trap. Maybe we shouldn't go do this. And it's like I get that it kind of like you can't really do that because then you're like kind of messing with the flow of the story. Because it's like, okay, we have to kind of do this fight to like make all the sages like realize, oh shit, okay, we're in for it now. Um, but there should have been at least some acknowledgement from the game that, yeah, okay, Link is aware that this is a trap.
Like
Instead of just going, yeah, we're gonna go there anyway.
even if it's just like a one-off thing where it's like where like a character like knowingly just goes it goes, "Oh, you're pretty sure that this isn't going to go out well." Well, we need to at least confirm it. You know, where it's like if even like one character acknowledges it, like it probably would have been better,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, like all it took would have been Pura going, "Oh, what's that, Link? That's not the real Zelda? Oh no." But like we have to confront them anyway. Like that would have been good enough. Like just some acknowledgement that the game understands that you already know this. Because otherwise you're sitting in front of your TV going, "Yes, I know this is a fake. Can we get this over with, please? Let me walk into the obvious trap that I already know about because I played the game out of order."
the one thing I would say that because like I gave Tears of the Kingdom my game of the year for that year, and I begrudgingly did it because I just did not like most of the games that came out that year. But at the end of the day, like I still thoroughly enjoy the game. Like I even right now want to go back and restart my entire save file, but I first want to get all the Deku seeds, uh the Korok seeds in uh Breath of the Wild to actually and then complete the DLC stuff to feel like I've actually completed that game before trying to 100% the next game. And I feel like I feel like that there is both not enough and too much of a little bit of the wrong things. And I never want to say that the game is just outright condemned because of that. What I would say is I I can at least acknowledge the fact that Zelda for those two games are fun wandering games, but they are not good Zelda games. You know, it people say this all the time when it comes to like Sonic, where it's like, man, I really liked this Sonic game, but it doesn't feel like Sonic. Or it's like, man, this Pokemon game had everything I really enjoyed on it, but it didn't feel like Pokemon. I feel like that we're getting that a lot more when it comes to Nintendo-based IPs. And yes, I'm kind of lumping in Sonic with that, even though it's technically not true. But ever since the Dreamcast kind of fused into the Dreamcast lineup kind of fused into the GameCube's lineup with a lot of games. Uh, People will consider Sonic to be kind of a partial Nintendo IP for several reasons, but it is kind of an interesting parallel when we kind of like also factor that one in. I will say though that when my biggest problem with Tears of the Kingdom is a logistical problem, but my problem with Breath of the Wild is how little they tried to cover that up.
Yeah.
And I would actually put Breath of the Wild slightly below Tears of the Kingdom if I didn't have such a weird experience with the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think overall I would agree with that. For me, I mean, yeah, I don't like that plot twist that isn't one, but overall I still think Tears of the Kingdom is better just because I like the whole concept with like, oh, you have the sky and then you have the depth. I kind of like that. I mean, on my first playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom, I spent all my time exploring the depths before I ever did anything on the ground or in the sky. Like I just spent a whole day or two even just going through and like uncovering the entire depth. Like I built my little fan plane and just flew through the depths and turned on all the light routes and all of that and went to all the mines and got all the chests before I ever did anything else in the game. So I kind of like those concepts. I hope they do that again in a future game where we have like different layers, quote unquote, of the world. But I also hope that with the next mainline Zelda, they hopefully bring back a little bit of the classic formula. Like I like the open world stuff, but please give me proper dungeons. Because like even the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom are kinda eh. Because they're all pretty easy. Like they're not really challenging at all. I'd say probably the Gerudo, like the lightning dungeon or whatever, was probably the best one.
I would say though that the entire vibe of the Sky Arc though is probably like the best experience in the game. And it's no wonder they kind of point it to you
Yeah,
first because it is probably one of the best overall like dungeon quote experiences in the game, even if the actual dungeon itself is kind of short. It's the whole build
yeah,
up and then the reveal of the boss and the musical choice that is in the dungeon that really does make that whole setting feel good.
yeah.
I
One
would
thing I really liked about both of those games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, is how they reuse um certain musical pieces of the series and I kind of adapted them to work with that new surrounding. Because like overall, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom don't have a lot of soundtrack. Like yeah, they have a little bit of background music, but most of the game is pretty quiet compared to let's say Ocarina of Time, where when you're in the overworld, you constantly have music playing. Or like I think that goes for pretty much all Zelda games. I don't think we've had a Zelda game,
mm,
uh, at least a mainline Zelda game where you don't have music playing in the background constantly as you move around the overworld.
I distinctly remember
Um,
uh weird tangent, but I distinctly remember a YouTuber I follow came back from E3 and he was talking about his experiences and he said that he wanted to make an independent game for Zelda since it's one of his favorite series of all time. And the
mm,
video for it literally opens up. He's not on his like usual like setup. He's not like doing anything with like Zelda. It's him sitting at his table in his house and he just opened up a bottle of alcohol, which he's not really too much of a drinker, but like he needed to make a point with this. And he goes, "So I play Breath of the Wild and I am now severely depressed." And he talks about how silent the game is and how destroyed and empty the world is, filled him with
Yeah.
so much sorrow for a world and a universe that he thoroughly enjoys is now just gone. It's like he can see
Yeah.
like ruins of buildings, and he's like, I looked at the Temple of Time and it was in shambles. Like, and I remembered the first time playing Ocarina of Time, hearing the music and just wanting just even a tiny little bit of that music to pop up, but it wasn't there. And the
Yeah.
loss is palpable. And I'm like, that's the experience that they wanted the game to be from the very beginning of Breath of the Wild to the end, because as you go,
Yeah.
and I would have enjoyed it if as you go through and you start connecting these like people together and you start like uh getting the band back together as it were, and you start completing more of the world, that music like started filling up the empty space. I would have thoroughly enjoyed it if
Yeah.
by the end of the game, once you've basically done mostly everything in the game, music had returned to the world, so it feels like things are right again. And I feel like
Yeah.
in Tears of the Kingdom, they tried to fill up that empty space with more music. Like every once in a while, like the depths are just filled with music, like with every tiny thing going on. And the sky has its own ambience of like this, this like ethereal sort of feeling of like every tiny little thing like making sounds and like filling the world up with that space. But the main world itself still is kind of empty. And
Yeah.
it's why when I published that video talking about what I want the third Zelda to be, I explicitly said that I want a Zelda game to be to have both of these vibes where I want Link to be from a world that is more modern. And I described it like Earthbound, where there was like it was a modern city with modern stuff, but there's still like monsters everywhere that you could still encounter. It's just that Link is like a kid from a small town who grew up like slaying these monsters like on the outskirts. And so that's basically what he does. And then he gets roped into this whole like adventure of like, well, you have to go to these different like cities to try to like fill out some problems because you might be the chosen one. But the thing is that in this modern
Mm.
day, what is a chosen one to a mythology that is like so far out from like what you even remember from from like a cultural standpoint? And much like the link between link to the past sort of stuff, you could then shift into the quote unquote dark world, which is just Link in the past, in which you are running around and you're doing stuff, but what you're actually doing is you are remembering Hyrule back when the rebuilding process has finished, and it's like a whole generation after that. And so you have these roads that are now in place. You have buildings that have resurfaced. You have all of these villages that are now back up to like full capacity again. And you have all these people just roaming around, but you still got a monster problem. And you're going back and forth between like modern modern destroyed dungeons, going into the past so you can complete those dungeons and then bring things back to complete the circuit as it was. And I feel like that would
Yeah.
be a good way to round off these set of three games of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom into whatever game this would be. I feel like
Mm.
that fundamentally that would be a more that would basically seal off the vibe.
Hmm. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I don't know if I'd be really on board with the modern timeline stuff. But yeah, the concept is definitely interesting. Um, but yeah, so to get back to my point, it was kind of like one of my favorite like Zelda soundtracks. Is still Dragon Roost Island from Wind Waker. And so I was kind of happy to see that in Tears of the King. I mean, in Breath of the Wild as well, but in Tears of the Kingdom more so. When you get to Rito Village, you have that song playing in the background, just ever so slightly. Like it's like a really slowed down version compared to the original, but it's kind of nice that they like recall the roots of where we first got to see the Rito, because of course Wind Waker was the first game that had the Rito. Like they didn't exist before that, and so having that song or a variation of that song play in the background a little bit is kind of nice. Um, and it was um a nice little drop of color in a world that was otherwise really empty. As we said, and I hope that whatever the next Zelda is gonna be, it brings back more music. Because in Breath of the Wild, it was kind of the same, where like the best parts of Breath of the Wild was whenever you encountered Cass. Like Cass would bring a little bit of that like lightheartedness and like the music back to the world, which of course if you look at the rest of the Zelda franchise, like the soundtrack is a huge part of the feel of the game. And I feel like in Breath of the Wild and in Tears of the Kingdom, the soundtracks were just kind of lackluster because, well, they basically didn't exist. So I hope they bring that back for the next one,
Yeah, I was mentioning
and
it
we
to
have like a proper score again.
I was mentioning it to my roommate the other day where my absolute favorite moment in almost any Zelda game is the beginning of the boss fight in Tears of the Kingdom. Like it's in my
Hmm.
top 10 favorite moments is where you reach the sky arc and you are uh just about done with the temple, and then the boss makes its appearance. Um, a little bit earlier than probably the player was expecting. And it comes up and it starts playing Wind Waker boss music. As you realize that this boss thematically is actually just an ice version of the fire boss uh from from Wind Waker. It it plays its music, but just with an ice key. It's neat. I
Yeah,
love it. And that reveal and you getting blown up above the cloud layer to where you see above the storm as the boss is just rushing towards you is one of the coolest experiences in any Zelda game. And I I still feel like that it kind of pales in comparison to 80% of like even though it's one of my favorite experiences in that game, it still pales in comparison to everything in Twilight Princess. Like because I feel like that it's
yeah.
able to set up its vibe and its story a lot better.
Hmm.
And it really does come down to how much are you willing to sacrifice for ambience in a game? Well, this has been an incredibly long conversation. It has been 2.5 hours.
Yup.
Uh, did you have anything about any of these games left to say before we end off, or
Mm, I hope that whatever the next mainline Zelda game is, Um, I want it to be more like Twilight Princess because once again, Twilight Princess best Zelda of all time in my opinion. Um, I want a modern Twilight Princess. Like great graphics, great story, maybe like an interesting mechanic like the whole turn into a wolf thing. Um, I don't know, maybe like I said earlier, make us turn into a Rito. I don't know. Give us something interesting and like bring back proper dungeons, bring back proper musical score. Um, and I will be the happiest camper, even though I still don't really want to buy a Switch 2. But I think that is a problem that will get solved over time. I mean, it sure did with the Switch one.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add on top of that, but what I would say uh that I am looking forward to whatever Zelda does next, and I might actually be a little bit more excited than whatever like Mario is doing. Like out of like the like big Nintendo franchises, uh Mario Odyssey is so good that I am not looking forward to any other Mario game. Like when Wonder came out, I'm like, okay, cool, it's just it's this thing again. You know, it's a 3D world again, but now it's got a different gimmick instead of it uh instead of the gimmick that it had before. And then it's and Metroid I've never really been that big on. Like Dread was pretty fun. But I've always
Mm.
been but the only Metroid game I've ever actually finished the completion was Prime 3 because it was on the Switch. Sorry, because it was on the Wii. And then you have Pokemon, which some people are worried that it's going to go off into a weird direction and make the Legends series like the main line and hold back on making more like full generations of Pokemon for a bit to like to kind of hold off on making more games that are like that and more like and more action focused games that are in the universe instead of actually making more Pokemon. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, so the only franchise that Nintendo has that I'm actually looking forward to see what they're doing is Zelda right now. And it really comes down to if they're going to actually make a Zelda game that I honestly feel is interesting. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this sort of open-ended nature to the franchise is here to stay forever, and I kind of don't want that.
Hmm.
Well, anyway, this has
Yeah.
been a fun podcast. Anything else you
Yeah.
want to say?
No. I think we've said everything that we needed to.
Okay.
But yeah,
Uh,
I just hope the next Zelda game brings back a little bit of the roots of the series. I mean, two open world games in a row were fun. Maybe the next one's gonna be a bit more of a linear one again. I certainly wouldn't complain.
and you could even do my idea that is like where it's the like two timelines in a modern Zelda setting. You could totally do that with the Breath of the Wild world, but still make it linear. Like you could still totally do that. You could just
Yeah,
compartmentalize the
totally.
game a little bit more, just using the assets from the game. And I don't know. I feel like that's basically it. Uh, thank you all for coming. This has been a very long-winded podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed. Uh, see all y'all another time. Goodbye.
Bye bye.